Hey YouTube, Donald here from Music in the Making. Wanted to do a quick review of the new PreSonus Faderport. I've been using this today, doing a mix, and I just kind of wanted to go over some of the pros and cons for this. I'm using it with Cubase, so it's not going to work as completely as it would with Studio One for obvious reasons, but it works pretty good. First I'll kind of go over the things that I like, and then I'll go over the things that I don't like or think could be improved. So to start, what's kind of nice is if you're working in low light, everything is lit up over here, so you can actually see it really clearly. So that's nice. I liked the feel of the fader. I thought it was reminiscent of faders I've seen on, like mixers and stuff, live gigs and whatnot. Feels just like those. Things that I wound up using a lot were and I have it selected right now, the channel selecting ability. The nice thing is you can use either the previous or next, or use the scroll bar if you want to scroll through a bunch of ones quickly. I did use that a lot, and then the other one was the marker track. I don't know if you guys use markers, but I use them quite a bit. So like in this session, I've got my marker track up at the top, and so if I use down here, if I use the next or previous buttons, then you can actually like go through. Well, you got to click on, I was still on the channel, so if you click on marker here, then you can use the next buttons to get to each different marker. So that was pretty nice. I liked that. I wound up using that quite a bit. And then the channel selection, the nice thing with that is you can use, you can see how I'm using the circular bar, and it's going up and down on tracks right there. And as you do that, you can see that it actually like moves the fader per the track that you're on. And then you can also use the previous and next buttons as well, and it does the same thing. It's just a little bit quicker if you're trying to go from like, a bunch of stuff. It's a little quicker with this because you can't, here's a con, but you can't hold this down to get further along. That's where this comes into play. So you'd have to go like to get to the last one. So that makes it nice that they have kind of the both of, if you're like just slowly going through, you can do that. Otherwise you can scroll through. So those are the two that I used a lot. Kind of a con with the marker one is that I was expecting to be able to see I'm on 7 right now. Say I wanted to get to 4. I thought I'd be able to go like this, but you'll notice if I do that, all it's doing is scrolling. I have to actually use the previous and next buttons to get back and forth. So that's something I think could be improved of. Instead of scrolling on the marker selection, I would have expected that to be the functionality under scroll, but not marker. I would have expected marker, if I did this, to be able to quickly scroll through all of the marker tracks, much like you can with the channel. Something I didn't really use too much was the pan, just because I pretty much do everything in LCR. So when you do, I'll bring up a channel here. So I'm on the just in the center right now. So if I wanted to go like all the way out here, so I did that with my mouse, you can use the scroll wheel, but it does it in increments. Go to the pan selection here. So it does it really slowly, so I'd have to like to go all the way to the other side. You gotta, you know, do 5, 6, 7 turns to get it all the way over there. So I don't really see the benefit in that, but that's available if you're going to do small things. I didn't use the link. I didn't really use the master. Click does not work in Cubase, and it actually says that in the manual that it doesn't work, unfortunately. It'd be nice if it did, but it doesn't. I didn't find a purpose for section either. All of these work as you would expect. The only thing that doesn't work is actually pause. If I hit play and hit pause again, it doesn't pause. You have to actually stop it. So I'm not really sure what maybe that's something that works in Studio One, but I have it set to as a preference in Cubase. If you stop, it'll go back to where you started. So if I hit stop, the loop function does work. You can turn on and off looping. That works just fine. And then the scrolling thing, these you can actually hold down. So if I hold it down, it'll scroll continuously. So that works well. Otherwise, solo, mute, and arm all work. Bypass didn't seem to do anything, and neither does touch. Read and write works. And one thing that I didn't use as much, but I plan to, is when you do shift and then previous or next, you can undo, redo like you in Cubase. It's either Control Z or Control Shift Z to undo and redo. So that actually works. It doesn't work in the mix console, but that makes sense because Control Shift Z and Control Z don't work in the mix console either. It only works in the project view. So that works like the keyboard shortcut essentially in Cubase, because if you're in the mix console, you have to go to that history section to actually undo and redo stuff. But other than that, the only kind of like weird quirky thing that I found was if I pull up the mix console here, you can see right now I've got, if I scroll over here, go channel and scroll over, I've got 16 tracks and then 8 group tracks, or buses, if you will. So this works kind of how you would expect it. So I'm using the channel function button with the scroll wheel here to go through. That works like you'd expect, because notice these white lines above like the description here is essentially the bank that you're in. So if I scroll over to 8 and want to go to 9, notice that bank shifts over from the first set of 8 to the next set of 8. So if I keep going and get to 16 and I do one more, then it goes to the last bank. So that works fine if you have an even or divisible by 8 number of tracks. Where that can become a problem is if, and it's not a big problem, but it's just something I noticed. So right now I'm actually hiding the effects channels. So if I bring those in, now I've got effects channels, and if so you can see the bank here is 17 through 24. If I go to 24 and then want to go over to 25 using like to just click one more time over, if I do that, notice it didn't go to 25, it went to 21. So what happened there was, and it took me a little while to figure this out, was it shifted the bank from 17 through 24, which would be 8, to the last 8, which is 21 through 28. And then it brings you to the first channel in that bank. So it happens if you go the other direction too with an odd number. So if I go 12 to 5. Here I'll scroll over so you can see it happen in advance. I did that with my mouse. So if I'm on 5 and I want to go to 4, what it's going to do is it's going to move the bank from 1 through 8, so then it's going to actually bring me to track 8. So if I scroll left once, it brought me to 8. So it's not a big deal, it's just something to be aware of when you're going over. So now going this direction again, you got to this bank, and notice there's 4 tracks left after this bank of 8. If I go to 24 instead of 25, it's going to go to 21. So it feels weird when you're like scrolling over and you're trying to get there. See how it did like that? It moves back and then keeps going. So you can keep going, it's not a big deal. Watch when we get over here. So it's not a big deal, but it's just kind of weird. I wouldn't think it would be terribly difficult to have it figure out when you go over to move the bank, but keep track of the track you were on to go to the next thing. Another kind of strange thing is in the project window, it also shows that kind of like gray bar information to show the bank that you're on, but you can't click on a thing and have it go to that fader. It doesn't move this because you're not on that bank. So a good example would be if I go to the drums, it didn't do anything. I gotta scroll all the way up to the drums, get into that bank, and then so back up so you can actually see this happen. If I click on overhead right, it'll move that fader. If I click on kick, it'll move the fader. But if I click on something that's not in that bank, say the shaker track, it does not move the fader and it doesn't change the bank. So you actually have to tell it to go down to the shaker. So that's another thing that's kind of weird, like selecting a track in the project window does not change the fader unless you're in that bank. Like clicking between these two does change the fader, but just kind of weird stuff like that. I don't know if it's better in Studio One, but in Cubase there is some limited functionality there. It's still very usable. Where I'm gonna see myself using, because I purposely tried to do like a static mix to see, and then purposely use this as much as I could. The fader I think is going to come in handy very much for automation. That'll be nice. And then as I was trying to get a static mix, I didn't really feel that much a difference between using the fader or using my scroll wheel to get a decent level. But if you're doing more fine tuning of something, to like say you're trying to balance a left and right side out, and you're trying to get it so it sounds in the middle, for example, or just to have it equal on both sides, it's nice to be able to close your eyes and have a hand on this, and then you can do small adjustments rather than with the scroll wheel, and it kind of like clicks through. It does it in larger chunks. So that's going to be nice to be able to kind of like really focus on the volume change that you're making. But that's pretty much everything I had that I noticed that was like a little weird with Cubase, and that I knew that was to be expected. It wasn't going to be as compatible as Studio One, but I thought I would do a review for it, specifically using it in Cubase, because that's where I do most of my work. So if you guys have any other questions about this, I won't be able to answer much about its functionality in Studio One, but you can assume that all of these buttons work in Studio One, because it's made for that, not made for that, but made by PreSonus. So if you have any questions with how maybe it works in Cubase or just about it in general, let me know. But in the meantime, go make some music, and I'll catch you guys later.